Hello, yes, I am sick, so enjoy my nasally voice. Thank you. Oh my god, what am I doing? Well, after 13 years after the release of Kingdom Hearts 2, Kingdom Hearts 3 has finally graced us with its presence. I can tell you, I have never been more hyped for a game in my life. And given how long we've had to wait for it, I really set my expectations high for this one. Better gameplay, better story, but with elements of what made us fall in love with the series in the first place. I was expecting it all. I wanted to experience this game without a single ounce of influence from anyone else. So I avoided the hell out of the internet for a long time. After all those leaks got spread around, and then just over a week after the release date, because I had to wait for my copy to arrive from overseas. And then finally it was there in my hands. I put my television on full blast so I could be treated to the new dearly beloved in all its glory, and holy hell, I was not disappointed. Yoko Shimomura upped her game and went all out for the soundtrack, and I admire her work so much. I finished the game in about a week because I purposefully tried not to binge it all in one go, and as I watched the credits roll after that final scene, I had this strange, weird feeling. It was kind of like, is this it? Is this really all that I waited for? And the more I turned it over in my mind, I started to admit to myself that I'd had that weird feeling throughout the majority of the game. Not the whole game, but I felt it at least once within each visit to a new world. And now that I was finally free to dive back into the internet without fear of spoilers, I started watching other people's reviews of Kingdom Hearts 3. I was really expecting to see mostly praise, but while there was some of that, there were a lot of people putting the weird feeling I had into words. There were a lot of issues in the game that I had picked up on, but I'd put on my nostalgia goggles and tried not to notice. This game was meant to be everything I dreamed of, and I didn't want to let go of that. But I have to accept it. Kingdom Hearts 3 is flawed. Majorly flawed. But as a huge fan of the series, I don't intend to completely trash this game in my review. So instead, I'm going to do what was done for me when I was a little kid at school and my teacher was giving feedback about me. They'd call it 2 stars, 1 wish, where they'd say 2 things that I did really well and 1 thing that I could work on. But there's a lot more to say about Kingdom Hearts 3 than just that. So instead, I'm aiming for 7 stars and 13 wishes. And just to note, in my stars section, I will avoid spoilers, but in the wishes section, I'll need to head into spoiler territory, so you'll have to skip that part to avoid ruining important parts of the story for yourself. So, in no particular order, let's get to the list. Quite a few of the voice actors absolutely perfected their role in this installment of Kingdom Hearts. Not all of them, as I'll mention, but Haley Joel Osment in particular really had his time to shine as Sora, and gave him more personality than I feel we've ever seen in the series. You can hear how much Osment loves his character, and how much fun he's having in that recording booth. And his voice as Vanitas was really well done this time around. You can hear this dark insanity in his voice that kinda took me aback at first, but when I got used to it, it really fit the character perfectly. And the Disney voice actors that were doing impersonations of the original actors, like the ones for Buzz and Woody, were on point, and it didn't break the immersion of the characters at all, so huge kudos to them. The graphics were exciting. With every new location, I got this buzz in the artistic side of my brain that just made me feel so overwhelmed with awe as I took in those sweet, sweet graphics. As much as I know everyone hated the Pirates of the Caribbean world, which I'll mention later, it really redeemed itself for me with its cinematic style graphics, and it made me so excited for each cutscene. And the fact that they did what they do in Final Fantasy games, where they occasionally switch from the in-game graphics to those beautifully polished cinematic graphics during those important moments in the game, it was just a really nice touch, and it made the experience even more immersive. As I've already mentioned, Yoko Shimomura upped her freaking game this time for her work on the soundtrack. Her work has been gradually becoming more complex in the themes she's provided over the series, but all the music had a very distinctive style. With the instruments she's used and the composition, you can hear it and you're like, oh, that's video game music, and that's Kingdom Hearts music. But this time, I could imagine Kingdom Hearts 3's music being used in an actual film. It is so beautifully orchestral and fleshed out that it creates this amazing cinematic experience. And without spoilers, that battle music and those last few battles were beautiful. The feature of having 3 Keyblades to switch between was a really fun addition to the battle system. Sure, the game was simple enough that you could stick to one Keyblade for the whole game and get by just fine if you wanted to, but having the control over the variation in your fighting style was really fun. My favorite Keyblade was Ever After for that sweet finishing move and its devastating magic attacks during its form change. The form changes in general were really cool, and I loved how you could switch back to Sora's Kingdom Hearts 2 outfit when using Kingdom Key. I think some people have criticized the dialogue in the game, calling it just as cringy as ever and trying to appeal to a younger audience, and yeah, I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I actually really like the dialogue, and I might be 21, but it does appeal to me. I do love the darker dialogue of 358 Days, and yeah, they went a bit backwards in Dream Drop Distance with its cheesiness, and 0.2 was so dark that it became a bit too cringy for me to take it seriously. But I think Kingdom Hearts 3 had a nice balance of the sweet, light-hearted dialogue mixed with jokes that were the right amount of meta or modern, and with some really cool, edgy, dark dialogue thrown in when it was needed. The Gummy Phone was an adorable addition to the game, specifically the camera feature. It made me so happy to take selfies with Disney characters and watch their reactions to seeing the new technology. And just the fact that Sora is so useless with modern technology was so cute. And I'm glad he managed to at least get the hang of taking photos by the end of his journey. I will admit though, I might have played like one of those retro minigames and then completely ignored the rest. I already played a few of them on Union Cross and they weren't all they were cracked up to be, so I thought it best to just give them a miss. Last on my list of stars is Little Chef's Bistro. I have a soft spot for cooking games. And yeah, the minigames were underwhelmingly short and you ended up failing for no apparent reason, but I just love the inclusion of it. When I got the hang of it, playing little cooking games was always a fun break from the action. Admittedly, I forgot to actually eat the creations I made since I always got by without any of its stat boosts, but still! Okay, we're heading into spoiler territory now, so if this is where you need to leave, thanks for watching this far. Still here? Then let's get into it, cause hoo boy do I have a lot to cover. Kairi's voice. Allison Stoner, I love you. Love your work. But you're meant to be Xion's voice. You have this sweet, clear tone that gave Xion a timid nature to her, and Hayden Panettiere had this cool rasp to her voice that really defined Kairi in Kingdom Hearts 2. Allison Stoner's voice, paired with Kairi's new look with the short hair, consequently made her feel like she'd had 3 years taken off her. Sora and Riku had obviously aged, with their looks and voices combined. So it was really jarring when Kairi came back with the same face from Kingdom Hearts 2, but a haircut from Kingdom Hearts 1 and a voice that was actually higher and weaker than the first game when Hayden Panettiere would have been a kid. I know it wasn't the voice actor's fault for sounding how she sounds, but as a casting choice it just really bugged me the whole time and I never got used to it. What the hell were Ienso, Dylan and Alias doing that whole time? Okay, Ienso was doing a lot of stuff off camera, but it just gave him a total lack of purpose for him to just pop up every now and then on the Gummy Phone and just talk about stuff he was doing and you didn't get to see any of it. The game's tell don't show thing it had going for it was really annoying and made some conversations seem really boring. And seriously, what even was Dylan and Alias's purpose? They stood around and did nothing as far as I know. Zoltan was so prominent in Kingdom Hearts 2, and even in 358 Days. He was this cool, menacing character who was really good at driving the story in his scenes, and now in the game's next biggest installment, he's downgraded to a totally irrelevant character. Even Lexius made me feel something in the way he was developed in Chain of Memories, so I'm just as mad about him getting stuck as a pointless background character too. The ship gameplay in the Pirates world was the most frustrating part of the entire game. I didn't die once in my standard mode playthrough, which I mistakenly played on, not knowing I'd basically be getting a beginner mode experience. But I failed that race with Luxord, whatever, at least 5 times. It was so frustrating trying to avoid obstacles with the slow as hell turning, while trying to blow up ships in my way. Everything just took so damn long when I was controlling my ship. I couldn't be bothered sticking around to upgrade it. I finished the world and the ship's lowest level, and maybe that's why things were so difficult for me, but really I just didn't have any interest in staying in that ship any longer than I had to. The Disney movies used were very cute, and I loved the charm that came with them, but the most jarring thing about being in most of them was the way that they stuck to the script of the movie to the exact detail, and then skipped over really important plot points, which made scenes seem so disconnected and left so many questions. I'd seen all the movies, but all I could think was if someone was playing this and they hadn't seen the movies, they're going to be really confused. In Tangled's world, when did Flynn Rider have enough time to tell Rapunzel his real name? In Frozen's world, what role does this Hans guy have in all this, and why is he suddenly so important at the end of the story? The whole story in the Pirates world, where do I even start? And I mean, the other worlds fixed that, but their downfall was that they were all so boring to play through. San Francisco, just a giant city. That's it. Monstropolis was a bunch of corridors and doors, and you go outside like one time. Toy Box was getting there, but the world was so far removed from the actual movie that its only redeeming quality was that I could sing along to the main theme of "You Got a Friend in Me" the whole time. How did Roxas come back at the end? How did he do it? I think he also mentioned making a vessel for him or something, but that was back in Radiant Garden. How did they transport it to the Keyblade graveyard? Why did he become recompleted at that moment? Roxas explained it to Xemnas, who was confused as well, but he did it in such a vague and indirect way that it left me feeling annoyed that he was mincing words and didn't come out and just explain himself properly. Seriously, it wasn't clever or mysterious to do it that way. And this whole thing about you traveled here from the past as hearts and you had vessels waiting for you just sounded really ridiculous to me. Like, it makes sense, but it was also a huge WTF moment. The whole thing about the organization choosing to become Nobodies thing was just as ridiculous. How does that work? Nobodies exist when a human dies, but the organization were humans who died, became Nobodies, were destroyed, recompleted as humans, and then chose to become Nobodies. Does that mean they killed themselves again? Was that just a sensitive way of saying that? That seems to be the only way to become a nobody, but if that's what they were getting at, they should have explained it. If they wanted their PG rating, they could have just said they chose to destroy themselves to become Nobodies, and that would have done it. But without any explanation, it's just like, what are you talking about? The villains had such a lack of personality. The only thing that really differentiated them from each other were their speech patterns. Xemnas, I'm a bad guy who talks about bad things slowly and in a deep voice. Vixen, I'm a bad guy who talks about bad things in a mad scientist voice. Larxene talks about bad things in a bitchy tone. Dimix talks about bad things in a dumb and funny way. Marluxia talks about things in a fabulous way. I guess Xigbar stood out, but he's super important at the end, so I guess he needed to have something going for him. But the villains' interactions with each other were so flat and pointless. Their interactions with Sora lacked urgency and had such a formula to it that even Sora calls them out on it. If you feel the need to make your protagonists call out your antagonists on their predictable routine, you need better antagonists. I was really disappointed that you don't get to fight any human villains until you get to the Pirates world where you fight Davy Jones. I miss the days of Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 where the big boss at the end of a world was the Disney villain in their natural form with their natural powers. But turning them into a giant Heartless was just the dumbest decision. There was no real emotional drive to defeat them. There was no, oh no, Ursula's going to kill Ariel if we don't stop her. Jafar is going to take over Agrabah. Maleficent literally wants to conquer the universe. None of that in this game. Mother Gothel already died before we had to fight her Heartless. Hans had no connection to the story before we fought his Wolf Heartless form. In Kingdom Hearts 3, the only need to defeat these enemies is that they're big and might step on people and break things if we don't get rid of them. They have no connection to the plot or the characters or anything. That's why Davy Jones really stood out as a boss fight, because it made me feel so cool to be fighting an enemy who was actually a threat to the characters. But every other villain was just a total letdown. Where did Dimix go? He was there for a couple of scenes and he did a thing, but seriously? Nomura is aware that Axel is the most popular organization member. Dimix is definitely a favorite as well, so why was he so underused? I mean, his few lines were great, but he got such a huge downgrade from Kingdom Hearts 2. This is probably my biggest issue with the game. Whenever an organization member died a dramatic death, I felt nothing, because these guys had literally all died before in previous games. Death is so meaningless in Kingdom Hearts that you know Sora can't be gone forever after his disappearance at the end, which was extremely emotional, but still. Going through all the trouble of giving each member this emotional speech where they redeem themselves and have this moment of connection with Sora, It all feels like a ridiculous waste of time. Sykes dies dramatically in Axel's arms, and then you see them both at the end after he's completed for the second time as Isa and everything's totally fine again. Hell, all of the Warriors of Light die dramatically, but nope, we can fix that too. Death in a story is meant to be used to create a deep sadness and a feeling of loss within the viewer. You're meant to feel grief like it's a real death. And yeah, you can have a fake out, like when Sora dies in the first game, and then the story's lore makes it possible for him to come back. But both the moment of him dying and coming back is special and meaningful. Xion dying in 358 days is seen as the saddest moment in the series, because it's a huge loss in the story. She doesn't come back, she's gone physically and from everyone's memory, and it's a good plot point. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a giant middle finger to the concept of death. Sometimes people die. We as fans can understand and accept that, so if you're killing off your characters and bringing each and every one of them back to life just to please your fans, we don't actually need that to be satisfied, especially if you're just going to kill them a second time like the organization members. Kingdom Hearts fans are now immune to the concept of death in the series, meaning you're going to need to come up with a fate much worse than that to evoke any emotion from us now, and that's a dark thought to have, but you know it's true. The attractions were annoying. I used them to get some fights over and done with, but there were some fights where I deliberately didn't touch them. The fight with Aqua in the Realm of Darkness was so perfect and emotional that there was no way I was going to bust out the teacup ride and ruin the moment. Seriously, you'd be in the middle of a boss fight with cool battle music, and then you'd jump on a sparkly attraction and that version of hand in hand would sound totally out of place. And a lot of people had mentioned the risk to reward ratio being totally off in this game, so I won't go into that, but seriously, why gift the player with these devastating attacks to end fights early with absolutely no cost? A game should present you with challenges that you're forced to navigate, not present you with easy breezy gameplay where you need to choose to create challenges for yourself. There's no feeling of accomplishment in purposefully making an otherwise easy game more challenging for yourself, at least in my opinion. There's no middle point in the story. The story as a whole is so underwhelming that you find yourself sitting through a bunch of nothing during the Disney Worlds and just waiting for something exciting to happen. I was actually tricked into thinking that something was happening during the scenes in between each world, but if I look back, it was usually just Sora finding out new bits of information from other characters, but the plot itself was basically at a standstill. But seriously, Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 proved that Nomura had his storytelling skills on point, with presenting a crucial conflict in the middle of the game that kept the player on their toes. The Battle of 1,000 Heartless is so memorable among fans because it was this authentic conflict that came out of nowhere, completely unplanned, and coming with a feeling of urgency and excitement. In Kingdom Hearts 3, the story just unfolds completely as planned. I mean, the part where everyone freaking dies, I guess, wasn't anticipated, but what a dumb conflict. Even that didn't present the player with an exciting challenge that they have to navigate in order to get the characters back on track. It happens in the form of a cutscene, and the solution to the problem is to take a break from the conflict and dance around a pretty sky world. It's just kind of dumb. And number 13. A huge problem I had with the story is that all these emotional moments have been building up for several games now, and when they're finally shown on screen, they're given so little importance that it made me feel dumb for anticipating them in the first place. Saving Aqua from the Realm of Darkness started off really cool, and then she just adjusts to life back in the Realm of Light really easily, and it feels like she never even left. Waking up Ven was just another day in Aqua's life, and Ven really didn't seem that excited to be back. The Sea Salt trio reuniting was really underwhelming. They deserved a more meaningful moment together than what they got, especially when the game that tore them apart had more emotion in its entire plot than that one scene managed to offer. And 358 Days was literally based on the premise that its characters had no emotions, so go figure. These scenes were probably what gave me most of the feeling of that's it, because I was really expecting to feel more from all these reunions after waiting for these characters to get their happy ending for so many years. It's like the game totally trashed every character except Sora. They mastered the humor aspect of the game. Scenes that were meant to be funny did make me laugh, but scenes that were meant to be sad didn't make me cry or leave me with a heavy heart like how I felt during previous games. So that's all I have to say about Kingdom Hearts 3. Was it a terrible game? No, but it has very little replay value for me. I haven't touched it since I found all the lucky emblems I needed for the secret ending. I don't have enough of an interest in anything else in the game to want to play its extra challenges or anything. I'm glad the game is finally here and I'm glad I got to play it, but I don't really want anything more from it. I would get more out of replaying Kingdom Hearts 2 for the millionth time, because that's a game that knows how to capture its audience and keep them playing long after the credits have rolled. Kingdom Hearts 3 really misses the mark on living up to the game that the last numbered title was, and that's a real shame. but it's not enough to make me give up on the series entirely. I'll still be looking out for Kingdom Hearts 4 or whatever Nomura decides to call it. Kingdom Hearts will always hold a special place in my heart, and I doubt that could ever change. Thanks for listening to my rant. See you next time.